Have you ever noticed that we spend our entire lives surrounded by noise? The constant chatter of social media, the opinions of family and friends, the pressure to conform to what society expects of us. But here's what's fascinating. In all that noise, there's one voice we rarely hear. The most important voice of all. Your own. What if I told you that the moment you start truly listening to yourself, something profound happens? Not the surface-level thoughts, not the anxious mental chatter, but that deeper, authentic voice within you. Carl Rogers, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, discovered something revolutionary about human nature. He found that when people finally learn to listen to themselves with genuine attention and compassion, healing doesn't just begin, it accelerates in ways that seem almost magical. Today, we're going to explore why this simple act of self-listening is perhaps the most powerful tool for psychological healing and personal transformation that exists. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how to tap into this incredible power within yourself. Or the voice you've been ignoring. Let me start with a story that might sound familiar. Sarah was a 35-year-old marketing executive who seemed to have it all together from the outside. Successful career, beautiful apartment, active social life. But she came to therapy because she felt completely empty inside. She described feeling like she was living someone else's life, going through the motions but never feeling truly alive or authentic. During our sessions, I asked her a simple question: what do you actually want? And you know what happened? She couldn't answer. She could tell me what her parents wanted for her, what her boss expected, what her friends thought she should do. But when it came to her own authentic desires, her own inner voice, there was just silence. This is what Rogers called the false self. It's the version of ourselves we create to meet external expectations, to gain approval, to avoid rejection. And here's the scary part. Most of us are so disconnected from our authentic selves that we don't even realize we're living this way. Rogers observed that from early childhood, we learn to ignore our own inner wisdom in favor of external validation. A child might feel angry about something unfair, but they're told, good children don't get angry. They might feel drawn to art or music, but they're pushed toward practical subjects. Slowly, layer by layer, we build up this false self that gets approval while our true self gets buried deeper and deeper. But here's what Rogers discovered that changed everything. That authentic self never actually disappears. It's always there, waiting. And when we finally start listening to it, healing begins immediately. The revolutionary discovery. Carl Rogers made his groundbreaking discovery almost by accident. In the 1940s and 50s, most therapy was based on the idea that the therapist was the expert who would analyze the patient and tell them what was wrong and how to fix it. But Rogers noticed something interesting. His clients seemed to improve most when he simply listened to them without judgment, when he created a space where they could explore their own thoughts and feelings freely. This led to what became known as person-centered therapy, but the principle behind it is much bigger than any therapeutic technique. Rogers realized that every human being has what he called an actualizing tendency. It's like a built-in compass that naturally moves us toward growth, healing, and becoming our fullest selves. The problem isn't that this compass is broken. The problem is that we've learned to ignore it. Think about it like this. If you plant a seed in good soil with adequate water and sunlight, it will naturally grow toward its full potential. You don't have to force it or tell it how to grow. It has its own inner wisdom about how to become what it's meant to be. Rogers discovered that humans work the same way. When we create the right conditions, particularly when we learn to listen to ourselves with the same acceptance and care we'd give to a good friend, our natural healing and growth processes activate. This was revolutionary because it shifted the focus from what's wrong with us to what's right with us. Instead of seeing people as broken and needing to be fixed, Rogers saw every person as having an innate wisdom and capacity for healing. The key was learning how to access it. Learn what true self-listening actually means now. When we talk about listening to yourself, I don't mean the constant mental chatter that goes on in your head all day. That's usually just noise, worry, or the voice of your conditioning. True self-listening is something much deeper and more subtle. It's tuning into what Rogers called your organismic experiencing. This includes your gut feelings, your intuitive responses, the subtle sense of rightness or wrongness you feel about different choices. It's that feeling in your chest when something resonates with you, or that slight contraction you feel when something doesn't align with who you really are. Let me give you a practical example. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone is asking you to do something, and intellectually it seems like you should say yes, but there's something inside you that feels resistant? Most of us override that feeling. We think we're being rational by ignoring it. But Rogers would say that resistance is valuable information. It's your authentic self telling you something important. Or think about times when you've had a sudden insight or creative idea that felt like it came from nowhere. You weren't trying to figure something out, you weren't analyzing, but suddenly you just knew something. That's your inner wisdom speaking. The problem is we've been trained to trust our analytical minds more than this deeper knowing. True self-listening also means paying attention to your emotional responses without immediately trying to change them or judge them. If you feel sad, instead of rushing to cheer yourself up, you pause and ask, what is this sadness trying to tell me? What does it need? If you feel angry, instead of suppressing it or acting it out, you listen. What boundary has been crossed? What's important to me that isn't being honored? This kind of listening requires what Rogers called unconditional positive regard toward yourself. It means approaching your inner experience with curiosity and compassion, rather than judgment and criticism. It's the same quality of attention you'd give to a close friend who was sharing something vulnerable with you. The healing power of self-acceptance. Here's where Rogers' insight becomes truly profound. Healing happens not when we fix ourselves, but when we fully accept ourselves. This sounds contradictory at first. How can accepting something lead to change? But Rogers discovered that this paradox is at the heart of all psychological healing. When we fight against aspects of ourselves, when we try to force change through willpower and self-criticism, we actually strengthen the very patterns we're trying to change. It's like trying to calm turbulent water by stirring it more vigorously. But when we bring a quality of gentle, accepting awareness to our experience, something shifts naturally. Let me share another story. David came to therapy because he was struggling with intense anxiety. His approach had always been to try to think his way out of it, to analyze why he was anxious, and to force himself to be more confident. But the harder he fought his anxiety, the stronger it seemed to become. In our work together, instead of trying to eliminate his anxiety, we started listening to it. What was it trying to protect him from? What did it need him to know? As David learned to approach his anxiety with curiosity rather than resistance, something remarkable happened. The anxiety didn't disappear overnight, but it transformed. It became less intense, less controlling, and eventually became a source of valuable information about his needs and boundaries. This is what Rogers meant by the healing power of acceptance. When we stop fighting ourselves and start listening with genuine care, our natural capacity for growth and healing is activated. It's not that we become passive or stop growing, it's that growth happens organically, from the inside out, rather than being forced from the outside in. The 3 core conditions. Rogers identified 3 essential conditions that need to be present for this kind of healing to occur. He originally described these in the context of therapy, but they apply just as powerfully to our relationship with ourselves. The first condition is genuineness or congruence. This means being honest about what you're actually experiencing rather than what you think you should be experiencing. If you're sad, you acknowledge the sadness. If you're confused, you admit the confusion. If you're angry, you don't pretend to be fine. Genuineness means dropping the pretense and being real with yourself. Most of us have learned to be genuine with others but fake with ourselves. We'll tell a friend exactly how we feel about a situation, but when we're alone, we minimize our feelings or talk ourselves out of them. Genuineness with yourself means giving your inner experience the same validity you'd give to anyone else's. The second condition is unconditional positive regard. This means accepting all aspects of your experience without condition. Not just the parts you're proud of, not just the feelings that seem justified, but everything. Your fears, your desires, your contradictions, your imperfections. All of it gets the same basic acceptance. This doesn't mean you have to like everything about yourself or that you can't want to grow and change. It means you recognize that your worth as a human being isn't conditional on being perfect. You can accept your current reality while still working toward growth. The third condition is empathic understanding. This means truly trying to understand your own experience from the inside, with compassion. Instead of judging your reactions or comparing them to how you think you should feel, you try to understand why you feel the way you do. What makes sense about this response given your history, your current circumstances, your deepest values? Empathic understanding toward yourself might sound like, "Of course I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I've been pushing myself really hard and haven't had time to process everything that's happening." Or, "It makes sense that I'm feeling resistant to this opportunity, even though it looks good on paper, because it would require me to compromise something that's really important to me." First, practical steps to start listening. Now let's get practical. How do you actually start developing this capacity for authentic self-listening? Here are some concrete steps you can begin implementing immediately. First, create regular spaces for internal check-ins. This doesn't have to be formal meditation, though that can be helpful. It might just be taking 5 minutes in the morning to sit quietly and ask yourself, "How am I really doing right now? What's alive in me today? What do I need?" The key is to ask these questions with genuine curiosity, not to get a specific answer or to fix anything. You're just gathering information. Sometimes the answer will be clear, sometimes it will be vague, sometimes there won't seem to be an answer at all. That's all okay. The practice is in the asking and the listening. Second, start paying attention to your body's responses. Your body is constantly giving you information about what's right for you and what isn't. That feeling of expansion in your chest when something excites you, the subtle tension in your stomach when something feels off, the way your shoulders relax when you're in the presence of someone who truly sees you. Most of us have learned to live in our heads and ignore these bodily signals, but they're incredibly accurate guides to what serves us and what doesn't. Start noticing. What makes your body feel more alive and energized? What makes it feel contracted or depleted? Third, practice what I call emotional curiosity. When you notice yourself having a strong emotional response to something, instead of immediately trying to talk yourself out of it or distract yourself from it, pause and get curious. What is this emotion trying to tell you? What does it care about? What would it need to feel resolved? This isn't about wallowing in emotions or letting them control your behavior. It's about treating your emotions as valuable sources of information about what matters to you and what you need. Fourth, start noticing the difference between your authentic voice and your conditioned responses. Your conditioned responses usually sound like shoulds and have-tos. They're often based on fear or seeking approval. Your authentic voice tends to be quieter, more centered, and connected to what genuinely feels right for you. For example, your conditioned voice might say, "I should take this job because it pays well and looks good on my resume." Your authentic voice might say something like, "Something about this opportunity doesn't feel quite right, even though I can't put my finger on why." Learning to distinguish between these voices takes practice, but it's one of the most important skills you can develop. When listening gets difficult, let's be honest, learning to listen to yourself isn't always easy or comfortable. Sometimes what you hear when you truly listen is painful. You might discover that you're more hurt than you realized, more angry than you wanted to admit, or more scared than you like to acknowledge. You might realize that you've been living in ways that don't align with your deepest values, or that you've been seeking approval from people whose opinions don't actually matter to you. You might discover needs you've been ignoring or dreams you've been suppressing. This is why so many people avoid deep self-listening. It can be confronting. But here's what Rogers understood. Avoiding this discomfort doesn't make it go away. It just keeps it underground where it continues to influence your life in ways you're not aware of. The path through is the same as the path in. Acceptance, compassion, and patience with yourself. When you encounter difficult truths about yourself or your life, you don't have to fix them immediately. You just have to be willing to see them clearly and hold them with the same care you'd offer to a friend. Sometimes the most healing thing you can say to yourself is, "This is really hard, and it makes sense that I'm struggling with this." That simple acknowledgement can be more transformative than any advice or solution. The ripple effects of authentic self-listening. When you start truly listening to yourself, the effects ripple out into every area of your life. Your relationships become more authentic because you're relating from your true self rather than from a false persona. Your work becomes more fulfilling because you're making choices based on what genuinely matters to you rather than just external expectations. You become more creative because you're not censoring your natural impulses and inspirations. You become more resilient because you're operating from your own center rather than being blown around by other people's opinions and reactions. Most importantly, you develop what Rogers called internal locus of evaluation. Instead of constantly looking outside yourself for validation and direction, you learn to trust your own inner compass. This doesn't mean you become selfish or ignore other people's needs. It means you show up as your authentic self, which is actually much more valuable to the world than any false version of yourself could ever be. People can sense authenticity, and they're drawn to it. When you're genuinely yourself, you give others permission to be genuine too. This creates deeper, more meaningful connections and contributions. Darstern, your inner wisdom is waiting. As we wrap up, I want you to remember this. Everything you need for healing and growth is already within you. Not as a potential to be developed, but as a reality that's waiting to be recognized and trusted. Your inner wisdom, your authentic self, your natural capacity for healing, it's all there right now. The question isn't whether you have this capacity. The question is whether you're willing to create the conditions for it to emerge. Are you willing to listen to yourself with the same care and attention you'd give to someone you love? Are you willing to trust that your inner experience has value, even when it doesn't make logical sense? Rogers spent his entire career proving that when people feel truly heard and accepted, they naturally move toward greater health, authenticity, and fulfillment. This is true when that acceptance comes from a therapist, from a friend, or from yourself. So I invite you to start today. Find a quiet moment, turn your attention inward with genuine curiosity and care, and simply ask, what's alive in me right now? What am I experiencing? What do I need to know? Then listen. Not for the right answer, not to fix anything, but simply to honor whatever arises. Trust that this simple act of authentic self-listening is not just the beginning of healing, it is healing itself. Your authentic self has been waiting patiently for this moment your entire life. It's time to finally give it the attention it deserves. When you do, you'll discover that healing doesn't just begin, it becomes a natural, ongoing part of who you are. The journey to yourself starts with a single step, truly listening to the voice that's been there all along.